I think oftentimes if you're an in-person coach, you can like see the person, like look into their eyes and be able to see like, all right, this, the person's energy is good today or whatever. And you can get a much better feel for like immediate feedback. Like the feedback loop is so much shorter in in-person coaching. Whereas if it's remote coaching, it's really hard to know sometimes if someone's sort of beat up a little bit, or like how to push them, how to help them grow as like a person. I mean, you could maybe do that through like video calls and stuff like that, but is there other ways through like communication that you feel like you help athletes develop those more soft skills?
That's a great question, because I think that's the question that I get asked the most, and it's probably the question I think about the most.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have two types of athletes. Well, not two, but the two main ones that I see. You have the athlete who, the person who feels like they have to give you the right feedback and do everything you say, or else they feel like they're letting you down, right? So even if they're tired, you're like, hey, how you feeling today? Like, oh, I feel great. Even though they might not be, right?
Right.
And then you have another type of athlete who might be too sensitive to different feelings in their body. And I've had games athletes like this as well, where you're like, my shoulder's, a little bit off. I got to back off today. I'm like, all right, well, you do CrossFit. Like your shoulder's probably going to be off for 6 months out of the year, right? It's like, to an extent, right? I mean, you know what I mean? And you have those athletes too. And for both those athletes, it's really hard to peel away the superficial language to understand what's really happening with them from a virtual standpoint. And I think the biggest way to really go about that is developing over time, like the trust. And, true leadership comes from really two things. It's trust and it's results. If the athlete trusts you, then they'll follow you. And if you get results, they'll follow you. And if an athlete really trusts you and the lines of communication are open in a way that they feel comfortable with explaining to you emotions or feelings, and they know that the feedback you give them is the appropriate and right feedback for them based off the results you've given them, then I think that opens up a new door for coaches from a virtual standpoint to be able to really assess their athletes in a better way, because that's the hardest thing to do, right? In the virtual world, is to truly assess them. Like you said, in person, the feedback loop is so quick, right? You can look in their eyes, you can see how they shake your hand, you can assess their body language, you can assess their voice projection. Did they yawn when they walk in? I mean, there's so many feedback. There's so many levels of feedback you can get instantaneous when working with somebody in person. Virtual, it's really hard to do. So they got to have that trust in you as a coach and the trust in you as a leader for them to be able to give you feedback, knowing that you're going to give them the best response to their feedback for what's going to lead them to success and results. So I think that really comes down to this just constant growing of trust.
Mm-hmm. I think there's, two ways that I personally think about doing this. Is like, number one, if you listen to their feedback where, just because they say they're a little run down doesn't mean you're like, oh, we have to instantly deload you. And like sometimes athletes, I think, kind of shelter a little bit of like their thoughts or emotions or whatever, just because like they don't necessarily trust like your decision-making process as their coach yet. So one of the things, if you're appropriately giving them maybe, actually listening to their feedback, but making sure the training decisions you make off that, are really correctly like what they actually need in that given moment, which isn't always an easy thing to do. But then the other thing that I personally try to do is like in the first maybe cycle I have that athlete, in the first like 6 to 8 weeks, maybe, we're going to pick two things and I'm going to make sure 100% that you get better at those two things so that we've got some additional buy-in moving forward. Because like I've already proven to myself as your coach, like now we can make sure that you are actually getting better, like measurably at these things. And it's like, I think if you can show, like you were saying, like build on those small wins so that the athlete buy-in goes up over time.
100%. Yeah. And I think those are the two things that coaches have to really focus on, is trust and results. Because if you get results, then they're going to trust you. And if they have the trust that you're going to give them the right stuff to be successful in the moment based on how they're feeling what's happening, then they're going to give you the right feedback. And they're going to know that what you're going to say back to them or tell them to do is the right thing. but that takes time, right? And it takes time, and different athletes need different forms of communication to build that trust and to have that confidence in your leadership.
Yeah, totally. I don't think there's any way to fast track that.
Yeah, no, there's not. I mean, sometimes, if you have a lot of results and a lot of progress, then they might come in right away, just listen and do whatever you say and do. But if it doesn't yield them results, then it will quickly be lost.